You're listening to Soundrise Podcast, a show hosted by Aleks in Serbia and Vlada in Poland.
Each week we cover a different artist or band and engage in an open and spontaneous debate and discussion about specific parts of their discographies. Our goal is to expand our musical horizons and cover a great range of artists and styles.
Find us on Patreon, patreon.com/soundrisepod, and social media @soundrisepod.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Soundrise Podcast. Today we have another episode where you get to choose the artist. And our listeners, our dear patrons have decided that today we will cover the Eagles. And this was suggested originally by our dear patron Kelly. So Kelly, thank you very much. And also huge shout out to everyone else who has supported us on Patreon. We cannot express how thankful we are for your support, for your feedback, for everything that you've done for us so far, for keeping us going. And so we dedicate this episode to you guys. And Kelly, thank you very much for such a wonderful suggestion. Alexander, any words from you?
First of all, good evening, Vlada. Hope you're doing well. I'm pretty good. Really excited about another Patreon episode. Our Patreon community is fantastic. They always give us great ideas and they always give us invaluable feedback. So really happy about this and ready to delve into this act, Vlada. Take it over.
Yes, so before we move on, I just want to mention all our dear patrons by name. So Cine, Margaret, Stefan, Kelly, Yanko, Andriana, Asha, Stephanie, and David. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for everything. Okay, so without any further ado, let's talk about Eagles. Okay, a big name today, a really big name. One of the best-selling acts of all time. Not sure what we can say about Eagles that is not already known, but before I give you some information about the band, I want to ask my dear friend Alexander, since he's quite younger than me and a different generation, I want to ask him what his experience with Eagles is.
All right, Vlada. As you said, I'm quite young, and now I'm gonna have a typical millennial moment. This is actually the first time that I'm discovering the Eagles. Of course, I'm not really talking about those major hits by the Eagles, but obviously their full records. So this is something very new to me, albeit they do sound like some other bands, or maybe it's better to say that some other bands sound like them. So, I think you'll be pretty surprised by my impressions. So, first, let's do some information, some background on this artist, Vlada.
All right, so what's interesting about the Eagles is that the musicians that originally founded the band were already very experienced session musicians or touring musicians. And for example, Don Henley and Glenn Frey, the backbone of the band, they met when they both played for the legendary country singer Linda Ronstadt. So this is where the band met. Soon enough, they were joined by Bernie Ledden, who was actually suggested by Linda. And Bernie was previously in one of my favorite bands of all time, the Flying Burrito Brothers, led by one Graham Parsons. So that's also another interesting thing. And also Ledden was in Dillard and Clark with Gene Clark. So as you can tell, these were very experienced musicians who already worked with great household names. And of course, the fourth original member was Randy Meisner. He also got to play in Linda Ronstadt's band, and the band went from there. Very soon they had a contract, given that they were very well connected in the music industry. For example, some of their friends were Jackson Browne, J.D. Souther, and so on. And it was relatively easy for the musicians of that caliber to get a, a contract with a label at that time. So, right from the get go, this was a very promising act, and they proved to be one of the most popular acts in the 70s, for better or worse. Now, there's a lot of controversy about this. There's some of their peers who are not very fond of the Eagles. For example, David Crosby originally said that Eagles were basically just some kind of diluted version of what Crosby, Stills, and Nash were doing before them, or what the Flying Burrito Brothers with Graham Parsons were doing. And this kind of thesis is very prominent, I would say, when you talk to a lot of fans of music, but I think it's very erroneous at the same time. And another thing that I find interesting about the Eagles is that there's a certain stereotype about them that, in my opinion, now, dear listeners, let me know if you don't agree with this. In my opinion, there's a certain negative stereotype that started with the movie The Big Lebowski, featuring Jeff Bridges. And in this film, the main character, the dude, has this recurring sentence: "I hate the fucking Eagles." And as you know, if you've watched the film, he's a huge fan of Creedence Clearwater Revival. So in his mind, they are like the epitome of cool, and the Eagles are the opposite. And I've had this feeling that ever since then, it's been kind of popular to hate on the Eagles. And in the process, a lot of their great qualities have been disregarded. So I will say my opinion here. I think that there's a big reason why the Eagles sold so many millions of records, why their greatest hits record from 1975 is one of the best selling, if not the best selling American record of all time. There is something about Eagles that transcends all these stereotypes and all these rather superficial assessments, even though some of them come from the likes of David Crosby. So, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the Eagles kind of burned out by the end of the 70s. They had a huge streak of million selling albums, number one hits. They were the real deal. They toured on jet planes. They were a part of a very high LA society. And eventually, that got to the band, and it caused a lot of strife and conflict, which led to the band disbanding in 1980. And now the story is that they were doing some kind of show, a benefit show for a senator from California. I forgot the name at the moment. So, dear listeners, if you know the name, let me know. And Don Felder, one of the guitar players in the Eagles, when he was responding to the senator's wife, who thanked him for participating in the benefit, he said, "Thank you, I guess," which of course was seen as a huge insult, and that infuriated Glenn Frey, who afterwards basically decided to leave the band, and that led to the complete breakup. That was in a way inevitable, given that their 70s output required a lot of effort, a lot of hard work, and what happened to them was probably something similar that happened to the Beatles. However, 14 years or 13 years later, they got together again. The last lineup from the 70s, the one that recorded 1979, The Long Run, got together again in 1994, and ever since then, the Eagles have been a touring and recording act again, even though they only recorded one more record in 2008. And there's still a lot of controversy about them. Don Felder, one of the best musicians to ever play in the Eagles, the guy who wrote the chords for Hotel California, he had a major dispute with the band. And we all know that, unfortunately, Glenn Frey died 4 or 5 years ago, and was subsequently, interestingly enough, replaced by his son and Vince Vince Gill, a country singer. So that's a whole different story now. Now that I've bombarded you with information, I want to get on to the first record. So, the debut record from 1972, as I said, prior to that, they were Linda Ronstadt's backing band, and this is where they came into their own. Alexander, before I give you my thoughts on this record, I would like to hear what you thought of this. Was this kind of record right up your alley?
All right, Vlada. Thank you for that fantastic introduction. To be fair, so many great and interesting facts there and information. Okay, so regarding this first record that was released in 1971, I think, or 1972, please correct me if I'm wrong there. Um, it's a really good record in my opinion. It features some of the hits, but I think that it is good no matter the popularity of the songs. What I'm really fascinated by when it comes to this record is the guitar work. I thought that the guitar, both the rhythm guitar and the solo guitars were fantastic. It, you can also see that, you can also hear that, to be precise, with other records. But this record is, to me, really highlighted by its guitar. Now, on the other hand, I can also praise the bass work. The bass guitar, I think, here is really good and significantly better than in the subsequent records. The only thing that I'm kind of on the fence about is the vocals. Now, in some songs, the singing is really good, and especially when it comes to the backing vocals, which kind of remind me of the Beatles, while the main vocals, the lead vocals, remind me of Blue Oyster Cult in some ways, Vlada.
That's an
Now,
odd comparison, I think. Really odd. So
in
wait,
what
I'm
way?
not sure I understood you correctly. Do you like the vocals or not?
As I said, Vlada, you're not paying attention. I'm on the fence here
Oh,
because,
you're on the
for one
fence.
reason,
That's what confuses me. Okay, just go on, go on. I'll tear
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
apart later. Okay.
I can't wait for that. Okay, so I like the backing vocals. I think they're great here. A really good addition and a great way to create an atmosphere. But the lead vocals, sometimes they sound good. Sometimes I find them, I don't know, a bit off-putting, if I may
Okay,
say.
but it's four different singers. So which one annoys you? Did you figure that out?
It's Glenn Frey. Yeah,
Glenn
it's
Fry. Glenn Fry. Okay.
Glenn Frey. Okay, it's a Glenn Frey, Vlada. So yeah, I'm not too sure. It's not great in my opinion. Sometimes it sounds good. Sometimes I don't really like it. So yeah, that's the bit about the vocals. But the rest of the record pretty good. Early Bird I think is a song that I've heard before from this album. The rest of the album was pretty much unknown. I liked the song Nightingale. Witchy Woman also really good, and also some other tracks like Take the Devil, where I really liked the instrumental work. So I can't really find too many flaws with this record, Vlada. How about you?
Okay, first of all, I have to say I'm kind of shocked that you would find flaws with vocals here. Even though I understand that given that there's four different singers, it's quite normal, I guess, to dislike one of them. In your case, Glenn Fry. I think that Take It Easy, which is the biggest hit on this record, is really well performed by Fry. I think his version is fantastic, even though this song was co written by Jackson Brown, a famous songwriter, one of the great American treasures, so to say, who at the time lived with Fry. And I have to say, I prefer Brown's version, which came out, I think, a few months later. So this is the first version that came out, the Eagles one, even though both Jackson Brown and the Eagles have the ownership of the song. I would urge our listeners if they know the song but never heard Jackson Brown's version, to check it out. Okay, check out Jackson Brown's version. You're gonna love it. But nevertheless, the Eagles arrangement is also awesome. Great vocals, a great start of the record, of the career, right from the get go, one of the major hits. And then it continues with Witchy Woman, which you mentioned, and I agree 100%. A wonderful song with some fantastic guitar. This is where I really love the guitar work on this one. Also, the backing vocals, very dark atmosphere, kind of
The
slick.
backing vocals are absolutely the strength of this band, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And we will talk more about it later. And that's the thing. On this record, you have four formidable singers. And it's somehow, it's kind of similar to what Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young had, this kind of four vocal harmony. They're really acing it, three vocal harmonies, four vocal, two vocal harmonies, whatever. They really ace that stuff. Maybe not on the same level as Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, because I'm not sure anyone is on that level when it comes to harmony singing. I'm sure some of you guys will disagree. But yeah, so it's definitely a strength. Now, another thing that I really loved about this record, so this is a debut record, but they already sound like a fully formed band. Like they know what they're doing, right? Did you have that impression listening to this, that these guys knew exactly what they were doing?
Absolutely. Everything was working here, everything was like a well oiled machine. And to be honest, I was kind of surprised when I found out that this was their debut record. I kind of picked it up and listened to it without thinking, is this a debut record or not? And then I Googled it and I found out that it was actually their first record. So well done on that, guys.
Yeah, I mean, of course, they were already experienced musicians, and it really shows. And, I think that a lot of criticism about the Eagles comes from the fact that at times they sounded too professional, almost like they were aiming for success, aiming too much for success. And I think this is why Crosby and some other people criticize them. For example, if you compare them to the Flying Burrito Brothers, that also had country rock sound, came before them, a couple of years before them, the Flying Burrito Brothers sounded gritty, sounded dirty, sounded edgy. And this is something that's often missing in the Eagles sound. But I think that that shouldn't necessarily be seen as a huge weakness, because they make up for it with wonderful harmonies, superb musicianship, great arrangements. It's never overplayed. Everything fits in. And another great thing on this record is how democratic the band feels. Something that I feel is going to change a bit over the time. But here on the debut album, we have four different singers and songwriters singing. We also have the input from some outside songwriters, like the aforementioned Jackson Brown, who also wrote Nightingale. We have a wonderful song, a cover, but I'm not sure if we should call it a cover, more like a reworking, because it was done by Dillard and Clark. The song is called Train Leaves Here This Morning, absolutely one of my favorites. And it was originally written by Bernie Ledden and Gene Clark, and it first appeared on one of the most overlooked and most wonderful records of the 60s, Dillard and Clark's The First Expedition of Dillard and Clark. So this was, I guess, because Bernie owned the song, it was more like a reworking rather than a cover. Uh, and it was a great version as well. Maybe not quite better than the original. I'm a bit partial to the original, but nevertheless, a beautiful version. And there's a wonderful live video of the Eagles performing this song on YouTube. Check that out, from 1972. And then Randy Meisner, I also want to mention him, because I feel that his vocals on some of the songs sound so powerful, even more powerful than other guys' vocals. He really had this booming voice, but still kind of melancholic. And he did a wonderful vocal performance on Most of Us Are Sad, very melancholy tune here. So, overall, another hit to mention before I sign off, peaceful, easy feeling. Now, some people find this kind of funny, that this one of the biggest hits by the Eagles is called Peaceful, Easy Feeling. And again, written by an outside songwriter, Jack Tempchin. This is one of the biggest hits by the band. And I think it's also a source of a lot of prejudice. How they're just this playing safe kind of band that's, for uh, wide masses and so on. Partly true, but partly I feel that it really, that kind of perspective really overlooks what's really great about this band. So, Alex, let's go to our ratings. Let me hear you first. Your favorite cut here and your rating.
All right, Vlada, I mostly agree with your assessments. A great record, not much to complain about here. Um, I forgot to mention how good "Take It Easy" is. It's a great beginning of the record. And
Boy,
yeah,
I
"Peaceful
love the
Easy."
lyrics there. Sorry to interrupt you. I love the lyrics. Uh,
Yeah,
just
and
Jackson Brown, guys. If you haven't heard Jackson Brown, check him out. One of the best songwriters of all time.
yeah, and finally, "Peaceful Easy Feeling." I think that's the song where the title says it. The title says it all. I would say. All
Yeah,
right,
for
so the
for
rating.
better or worse. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so the ratings. I would say 8.5 for now. I think it's a very good record. Um, Not really, almost flawless. Maybe the rating will go up eventually, but for now, I'll stick with 8.5. And my favorite song here is. It's kind of difficult to pick. I'll go with Nightingale, Vlada.
All right. A really great debut record, but I think I agree with you about the rating 8.5. Even though some of the songs here are extremely strong, Take It Easy, especially Train Leaves Here This Morning, Witchy Woman. Those three, I think I would single out those three songs. The others are also awesome. Most of Us Are Sad is another song that I always love to go back to. Sometimes certain songs kind of sound good, but a bit by numbers, like typical 70s stuff, like Trying, for example. But overall, a great record. 8.5 is my rating too. And the best song, I will choose. So hard, man. Between those three, I don't know. Maybe, okay, I'll choose Train Leaves Here This Morning, just because people usually overlook that one. So let's move on. And the next record we're talking about, we're going to skip some records. Unfortunately, we cannot afford covering their whole discography. So we skipped some very significant records like Desperado, One of These Nights, and we're going to the big one, to the record that's not only one of the best selling records of all time, but the record that lost to Rumors at Grammys in 1978 for the best album of the years. So we're talking, of course, about Hotel California. So, Alexander, Hotel California, when somebody says that, what do you think of?
It's it's a mega hit. I mean, you can hear it everywhere, even nowadays. I have to say, apart from certain tracks, this album as a whole didn't sit well with me, I must say. Now, I know it's, one of the
What?
best-selling records. I know. I can see it coming. I know it's a huge record, but I think that this record is not better than the previous one. For the main reason here is I thought it sounded at times it sounded too cheesy, and the vocals here the issue with the lead vocals here is bigger, I would say, compared to the previous record that we talked about. Now, you still have some very good songs here. I was particularly amazed by the last track called "The Last Resort," and it is said that this song is about how human beings are the true animals on this world because they are capable of destroying their environment, and that's a very cool, not very cool. That's a very important message, and that's why I like this song particularly. It is 7 minutes long, and it offers a lot. Musically speaking, still a pretty good record. To be honest, I didn't pay much attention to the first two tracks. Okay, Hotel California, the big one. I don't know. I've heard it a million times before, so whatever. New Kid in Town as well. But still, you have some really good tracks here, like Try and Love Again. I enjoyed it pretty much, particularly because of the guitar solos there and the vocals, especially towards the end of the song. Um, the backing vocals are just really, really good. Uh, when it comes to the other tracks, Life in the Fast Lane, Pretty Maids, All in a Row, all good tracks. But as a whole, maybe I just need to give this record uh, another chance. And yeah, that's it for now, Vlada. How about you?
Okay, first of all, I apologize. I apologize, okay, to all the people listening to this. I mean, I don't know. Some of these opinions are borderline travesty. But I,
Whatever.
yeah, okay, we'll tolerate it for now, just for the sake of the show. That's an interesting perspective, and of course, it was your first time listening to the record, so I will take it easy, as they said on the previous record. And okay, so this record is very important to me. This is the record that I first heard when I was 14 or 15 years old. I remember buying the CD, knowing only, of course, the title track, but wanting to hear the rest. I was really curious about Eagles, given that I really loved old 60s and 70s rock, and Eagles were a household name, and somehow I didn't get around to listening to them at the time. So this was my first encounter with Eagles. And at that time, there was no one to corrupt me with all these ideas how Eagles are somehow too slick or too safe or whatever. I just enjoyed the music. I just focused on the music, and the music here is spectacular. Spectacular. And not just the music, but also the lyrics. And it's worth mentioning that Don Henley is a very well read guy who studied literature at the university, and he has a very peculiar writing style, very original, that has to be praised, especially on this record where he truly shines with lyrical content. And the title track is a perfect example of this. To this day, people love discussing what it is about. There were even some strange ideas how it is about Satanism and God knows what. And this idea extended also to the album cover, where if you look at the back side of the album cover, allegedly, well, you can kind of see the silhouette. There's a silhouette in one on the balcony next to one of the windows, and people say that that silhouette is meant to be Satan or some silly theory like this. And of course, with this song, they were also making all kinds of wild guesses. But as Don Henley said, this song is about the underbelly of the society in California. And I think I discussed the lyrics with my girlfriend Asha, also a member of our team here. So prior to the episode, we discussed the lyrics, and we agreed that it's mostly about this rich Hollywood style life that once you become a part of it, you can never fully detach yourself from it. How people in that kind of hedonistic lifestyle have a tendency to destroy either people around them or themselves. And I think this is perfectly captured with the lyrics. Just amazing. For example, lyrics like "Her mind is Tiffany twisted. She got the Mercedes Benz. She got a lot of pretty, pretty boys she calls friends." Like the Tiffany twisted. I was like, what does that mean? And then, of course, Tiffany's a jewelry company. So basically, it talks about excessive materialism of this society. Then there's some very ambiguous lyrics like, "So I called up the captain, please bring me my wine. He said we haven't had that spirit here since 1969." So this is a nice play with words where the spirit can mean an alcoholic drink, but also spirit uh, we haven't had that spirit since 1969. I think it's one of the recurring topics in the music of the 70s, that destruction of the innocence that came after the legendary Altman concerts in 1969, where Hell's Angels killed several people. Or was it one person? Yeah, it was one person, but still, there was a gruesome murder taking place at that festival, and that kind of destroyed this illusion of love and peace that existed in the 60s. So this is another reference to that destruction of innocence and illusion. So really fantastic Suburb. I don't have time to go through all the lyrics that I'm fascinated with. So I just Alexander, sorry for launching into this kind of monologue. I just want to mention some other tracks here. Dear listeners, you will also forgive me. This record simply means a lot to me, and I think to this day it's one of the best records I've ever heard. New Kid in Town is another number one song that they had. Kind of a commercial sounding song, a bit lightweight compared to most other ones on the record, but absolutely stunningly well performed. What I really love about this track, not only that the arrangement is so perfectly done, but at the end of the song, there's this part where they all come in